I want to talk a bit about tying in the trailer. Now, depending on the type of trailer that you have, uh, I don't endorse tying. I don't encourage you to tie at all. I had one horse only that I ever tied in a trailer, simply because at that time I had a two straight, and she was a smaller horse, and she'd get her head down in front of the manger and kind of get stuck there, sort of thing. So I used to tie her to just keep her head up. But if a horse slips and falls or something while it's tied, I don't think that's a good thing. And the one thing I really, really discourage people from using is those short little cords that are about this long. They're stretchy. They're actually made specifically for using in trailers, for tying horses in trailers. I think those things are absolutely horrible. They actually teach a horse to pull, is what they do. Because what happens, because they're stretchy, they might stretch out about that far. Then the horse moves ahead that far, but there's still tension on it because its compressed length is about that much. So the horse isn't getting released when it moves ahead. And so it thinks, well, what's the point? And that can lead to a lot of problems in other areas because the horse doesn't see any point in following the feel of that lead because it's not getting a release when it moves ahead. The other downside of those things, I think, is I'm sure a horse can pull hard enough to break one of those things if it has to, or if it falls down, it might break it. And if the horse is already freaked out because it's fallen down because you hit a big bump or whatever happened, the last thing it needs is to have one of those things snapping in its face. And regardless of why it breaks, if one of those things breaks, they're very similar to tarp straps, those black stretchy things used for tying down tarpaulins with and stuff. And there's a lot of tension on those things, but they will break. And when they do, man, they let go with a vengeance. And if a horse gets hit in the face with one of those things, if it's already worried enough that it's pulling that hard, and then gets hit in the face with one of these things when it breaks, I can't even imagine what might happen. The consequences could be very serious, and the amount of force is definitely enough to cause injury. And if it happens to hit them in the eye, it could easily take out an eye. And I don't think any of you want a one-eyed horse. That would definitely be a bad thing. So those tying in a trailer, I don't recommend it at all, actually, because horses feel more comfortable when they're not tied. If you have a stock trailer like this one where there's a lot of room in it, the horses can turn around, and they will. They've done studies on it. I've talked to people. I've experienced myself. For some reason, horses prefer. There's a couple theories on why they do it, but I'm not going to get into that. But the fact is, horses actually prefer to turn around and ride backwards, face backwards. And if they're tied, they can't do that. So they're going to be a little more anxious because they're facing the wrong direction. And as I said before, tying a horse makes it anxious, period. So I think it's kind of a double whammy there if you tie a horse on a trailer. Not a good idea, in my opinion. Lots of people do it. If you do, you do. I don't. I don't think it's that good of an idea. I see the down. Some people say, "Oh, if the horse is tied, it can't fall." But the way I see it is, if the horse does fall and it's tied, it's going to be hanging by its halter, and it may actually have a hard time getting back up. If the horse is not tied, it has complete freedom of movement, and its chances of getting back up, I think, are probably a lot better. So, that's my little bit on tying in a trailer. Oh, and on the note of tying. Even when you take the horse out of the trailer, you want to be able to clip a lead on in a hurry. So most people leave a halter on. That's not a bad idea in a trailer. That's actually probably a good idea. But I would say never, ever use a rope halter for that because they are ridiculously strong things that don't break. And if it gets hooked on something, you could end up with an injured horse, and you don't want that. So I would, even a web halter can be strong enough. Horses have died because of those things. So, if you have to use a halter, which you probably should in a trailer, use a web halter. Never ever use a rope halter in a trailer. And in fact, if the horse is out of your sight for even a few seconds, don't leave a rope halter on it, okay? That's my opinion on those things. They're great training tools. I like using them. I use them a lot. I ride in them and everything else, but I will not leave a horse unattended with a rope halter on. That's a recipe for disaster. So, that's my opinion on tying in a trailer, do's and don'ts. Talk at you again in a bit.